the other thing too is just suspension fluid's not all the same. We've tested every suspension fluid on the planet. KYB Japan makes the fluid that all the factory teams use. All my guys in NASCAR have switched to it after they saw what we did in 2007 with Robbie Gordon. I did a big test on the dyno and showed them what the shock fluid did over heat. I heated the shock up with an infrared gauge on it and a heat blanket. It should have melted the seals out of the damn shock. It was so hot. And it had literally 2 clicks of adjustment on the shock difference in change over that heat range. I forget what the number was, but it was like, that was pretty impressive. And I showed that to a couple of guys at JGR, and they're like, oh, I think we're going to run that in our NASCAR shocks. And so spend the money on the KYB oil, whether you get it through us, you get it through Yamaha shop, get it through online. I mean, Amazon's got the stuff now. There's a ton of, you can buy these kits on Amazon for cheaper than I can buy from my dealer. So Yamaha, KTM. If you are dealing with a bike that has problematic seals, maybe like a Sachs or something like that, a lot of times you can cross-reference the stuff, and we can help you with that. A lot of the dealers can cross-reference it. SKF makes a really good product. These seals on the WP are made by SKF. I don't particularly care for the SKF stuff in the KYB and the Showa. I don't feel like they last as long as they do for some reason. The WP stuff, they'll last for years. We're not seeing the longevity of them in the Japanese bikes for some reason. I don't know if it's a size difference or what.
Just going back to the clickers for that, for the underdamp, for the undersprung situation, is there anything that can be done with clickers to sort of mitigate that until you get a new spring?
Yes. The problem is you're robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point. You're going to slow the rebound down, and you're going to slow the compression down because you don't have enough spring. Right, so you're building more spring energy, sort of, because it's going deep in the stroke, but then you're combating it with dampening, which then it doesn't handle as good, so you start to get that side to side, that hunt and peck out of it. And on bigger bumps, you don't get as much of that because you're forcing it to move because the spring is soft. So it's kind of, that's where the tuning part of it comes in, where if you really want to start with the right springs for your weight, for your bike, for your application first, and then kind of go from there as far as tuning. If you want to step it, and then you can do a lot of the stuff yourself too. I mean, it's if you want to mess with the valving yourself, you can send us an email like, this is my stock valving, this is what it does, I don't like it, what do I do? We can help you with it. You know, I don't have a problem with people learning their own stuff. We offer training clinics. It's $2,500 for 5 days. It's only 5 people or less. It's a very hands-on, intensive program for people that have taken this stuff apart and put it back together before, but want to learn how to really get into it, or maybe want to pursue it as an occupation. It's a certificate class. Yeah. All you need is just a seal driver. Unfortunately, yeah, like a 4748 is the same size, the 4950 is the same size. Racetech's got some good fork seal drivers. I primarily recommend theirs. They're easy to get. I've got a design to build some that have some neat things to them for people that use them every single day. They just have, the market's so small for that. Build them to sell 30 of them is not going to make sense. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, correct. So the rear shocks, all rear shocks are pretty much set up for the same viscosity oil. The higher viscosity oil, the more breakdown you get, so the more change you get from hot to cold, and you don't want that. You know, you want your bike to be consistent the whole ride. Like this bike, we run an open bath front fork so that we have a consistent ride all 1,200 miles of Baja. You don't want to take this style of fork. You've only got limited oil in here doing the dampening. It gets hot, the fork gets pumped up, right, because the oil grows, and then this thing's like, it's more firm. So the guy that gets on the bike, the gal that gets on the bike, the second half of the race is like, what is this thing? This is nothing like I rode on practice, or this isn't the same bike, and then they struggle bus the last half of the race because the component is overheated, it's not functioning the same. And so the shock's very important in that, especially because it will throw you on your head if it's, you know, they literally, like Maxima shock oil at the national level, if you're riding outdoor motocross, the last 6 laps of an outdoor national with Maxima shock oil in the bike will absolutely have no damage. And we've seen multiple shocks where the inside of the shock is damaged, anodizing and stuff from aftermarket oil like Silcoline. I've actually seen a shock stick in compression with Silcoline oil in it. It was pretty impressive. It cooled off and then came back. That's a lot of force to hold. Yeah.
So the wear rings on the outside of the fork, is that just, no, I'm talking about on the outside of on the upper tube.
These?
Yeah, I mean, those wear out. Is that just a cosmetic thing? Or
so these just keep the fork guard, the plastic piece, from cutting into the actual tube. So, and they're cheap, they're easy to replace. So I recommend keeping fresh ones on there, or doing some sort of, Yamaha used to have a neat plastic ring around there that held on by the ring, and there's some different stuff. SKF makes a really nice scraper that we use on the snow bikes that you can put on over here that actually helps keep the junk away from the dust seals, and then has added wear protection for the fork.
Have you ever seen one where that's
No, I've never.
So much that it damaged the tube or whatever?
No, I mean it damages the tube, but it's not where it affects anything. I've seen the fork tubes hit so hard that it makes them like an egg and it blows the fork seal out. But nothing's going to fix that except not hitting the rock. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we're here all weekend, and if you want to do sag and clicker setup, anywhere you see a TBT truck, this is always provided complimentary. Yep. It looks pretty. We run the Kashima coating on the upper just for our race bike because kind of our rule of thumb is we want to run the best stuff we can get. And Kashima coated upper tubes is the best you can get. Can you feel the difference? No. Will it make a difference in how good you ride your bike? No. Spend your money on training. DLC is nice because the Rockwell is very hard on it. It looks neat because it's black. It's less slippery than production chrome by 1 on the scale, or equal to some of the cheaper chrome. So there's no added benefit from, you know, stiction, or a lot of people talk about all that stuff. Most of that stuff you can't feel. I've back-to-back tested even the titanium nitrate, the green coatings. Can't feel the difference. And that was with riders that can feel. Like I can turn one of our test riders, I can turn the rebound 1 click slower on the front fork, not tell him I did it, and he'll come back and be like, hey, put the rebound back on the front. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you slowed the rebound down on the front 1 click. How do you feel that? Like, I can't feel that. I've been doing this my whole life. But you're not going to feel the coatings. If you got the cash and you want something that looks cool, by all means, we'll take care of it for you. Yeah.
On that bikes, we sometimes spray plates or protector or something like that. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, I recommend that so anytime you wash your motorcycle, typically the cleaner, I like Mr. Clean the best. I mix it half and half with water. You can get it at Home Depot cheap. It doesn't mess with your brake pads like Simple Green does. We found out the hard way that Simple Green makes your brake pads not work. Don't ask me why. But I got a rider that every time his bike got washed with Simple Green, he'd come back and complain that the rear brakes weren't working. And I'm like, why is that? And we finally figured it out. But what happens is it strips the oil off of here. And so, yeah, that's a great thing. I like to take like WD-40 or some sort of light oil, fork oil, anything, and just wipe the tubes down with a blue paper towel. And that way it breaks that surface tension because the seal moves nice and smooth on there. And you'll find that when the tube's dry from washing the bike, the seal does not. And it's more apt to drag the dirt up in past the oil seal if it's dry like that. So if you keep it clean and keep it damp with an oil, like what David's saying, you'll extend the life of your seals because you're not going to pull that dirt up into the fork tube. So, good question. Any other questions? Sweet. Yeah.
Why do all the Japanese manufacturers, I should say all, like that twin is, like the static sag is really, it's like 28% of the travel.
The rider sag should be about 30% of the travel, but the static sag should only be maybe 5%. I think it's 5%. About 30 millimeters generally is what we're looking for.
Sells a bike with the static sag at like 20%.
I don't think that it is. I think it ends up there because it's undersprung. So, the hard part about production, the thing you got to remember is that the manufacturers building, that's a good topic, the manufacturers build these bikes for this average rider of average height, average speed, and they don't exist. And so it's kind of a pisser for most people because the bike is set up for somebody that doesn't exist. I think they'd be better off setting it up for an what the market is, like an amateur 5'8", 195-pound trail bike guy. And then just put a disclaimer in there that if you're not this person, go get your suspension done. Because then at least it fits one person. And then the other part is that if I took every one of you and put you on this motorcycle, a lot of you would think it was the best thing ever, and there's going to be a segment of you, probably 15 to 20%, that are like, I don't like it. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the motorcycle. It just means you don't like it. And so that's where working with a suspension tuner, we get to know your preferences, and we can expose a lot of that stuff prior to setting up your valving and setting up your spring package to where we can build you something that's for you. If your car came with a seat that was non-adjustable, the seat market would be insane because everybody's a different height, different weight, different legs. I mean, you could take 3 guys that are 6'6", and they all got different length legs, but they're the same height, right? And so the motorcycle is the same way. I mean, it's not tuned for any of that. And so having it custom tuned for you, for your use, your height, your preferences, and that's, I think, where you really get into some value with tuning is because of the preferences. We can have a conversation. You can be like, look, I like my bike like this. This is where I ride. We can go in and build the shim stack. And then if you don't like it, you can send it back and it's free. We take it apart and change it. And probably, I'd say maybe 5%. That's what happens. We do our best to expose all of those things through questions, like what you're looking for, and sometimes you miss it. Sometimes guys will. The biggest trick is intermediate level rider, and because for people that just come out on the weekend and they ride, they're like, yeah, I'm intermediate, meaning I'm pretty middle of the road. But in my world, intermediate is the class right before the pro class, which means I'm racing all the time. I'm waiting to get my pro points, and then I'm going to go race Supercross intermediate. Well, they're not the same thing. So it's kind of like Days of Thunder, where you got to get the lingo down. And so we dig down, and it's like, okay, well, based on the bike you have, I'm not going to go that you're an intermediate or a B-level rider, looking to eventually be a pro. I'm going to go, yeah, the guy's a novice, and he's a pretty good rider, but he's not 6th, 7th gear through this crazy stuff. It's 1st, 2nd gear. And then that way we can better set it up. And that's, I think, more of the misses come in that communication, or miscommunication, if you will. So, any questions? Cool. Well, thank you guys for coming out. Anything you guys need, swing by the tent. I'm going to be here all day today and tomorrow morning for a little while. And sag, clickers, all that stuff. Some of the bikes don't have clickers. I can help you look at what's available. In the ADV market, a lot of the forks don't have external adjustment. You got cartridge tube forks. Racetech's got emulators and springs. There's a whole bunch of different stuff. It's hard to speak to the specific bikes. So just come by the truck and we can have a conversation about your particular bike.